Hello, 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 and welcome. I got an alarm going off because I was trying to make sure that I was on time tonight. Hello, Courtney. How are you doing tonight? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am really kind of this is a one of going it's going to be one of those lives. It's kind of serious. Well, not kind of. It is a serious topic. However, I don't want to make it so serious that, we can't get everything that we need out of it because I think this is a very important topic. And especially because this month is PTSD month. So I want to allow some more people to come into the room before I really get started. But Courtney, since you're here, do you know anyone who has PTSD or experienced PTSD? Put a one in the chat if you do, because this is something that now, and hey, me too, Courtney, me too. So that's why this is an important topic for me, and I think a lot of people take for granted what PTSD is. I think most people, when you say PTSD, they only think about someone who's been in the military. A lot of times we don't think about PTSD as affecting our mothers, our grandmothers, grandfathers, our fathers, our sisters, brothers, cousins, our children can even experience PTSD. So it's really important to have this conversation. So that's why let's talk about the truth when it comes to PTSD. And of course, we do have to recognize those who have been in the military and seen combat right in front of their eyes, and they know and they've experienced different things. But we're going to talk about it on another level of those people like me, as well as Courtney mentioned in the chat, as showing that have PTSD, and it can really happen to anybody. So, what I want to do, let me put this banner up because I do want this to stay up the whole time so that we can, be aware that this is what our topic is, PTSD month. So, first of all, we're going to talk about some of the realities, the harsh realities of PTSD. We want to talk about some of the symptoms of PTSD, sometimes the coping mechanisms that you can use. And this is not to say that this is one of those this is going to be very general because depending on your circumstances will depend on what type of coping mechanisms you'll need for your PTSD. Hello, just here to inspire. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad to see you're here. And I have to ask you too as well, do you know of anyone who suffers from PTSD, or have you yourself suffered from PTSD? If you like to, go ahead and put it in the chat. So, to continue, also, we're going to understand a little bit better about getting support for PTSD. So, as we go on this journey of speaking about this very important topic, and we want to give credence to the fact that June is PTSD Awareness Month. So, like I said, this is very important topic to me. So, one thing I want to talk about is my own story of PTSD. And there's many different reasons why I have PTSD. It's not just one incident that has happened. But because some people who know me from talking on YouTube plenty of times, I talked about the difficulties that I had in childhood, trauma from my stepfather. And because of that, it caused me to have PTSD. Now, of course, when I was young, or even when I was teenage, even probably to my 20s or 30s, I did not realize that I had PTSD. Now, I knew I had different issues, so to speak, because I've never dealt well with being surprised, or sometimes, especially when I started getting older and out of the situation that I was in as a child, I would still sometimes get a trigger, but I didn't know it was a trigger. I didn't even understand what triggers were. So I had to deal with it the best way I could. There was times where to this day, it can happen where I'm immobile. I feel like a paralyzed person. And I'm going to go into the reason why more in another video. I just really want to talk about the symptoms that I have with the PTSD, but I'll explain why those symptoms come later in another video. But anyway, so sometimes I can become like immobile, like I'm paralyzed. Sometimes I feel heaviness on my chest. I have panic attacks, I have anxiety attacks, and sometimes these come across when I least expect it. I'm not doing anything in particular. Sometimes I can be triggered by something and it just happens. And of honestly, if you've ever had a panic attack, it feels like you're having a heart attack. It feels like you're about to die. And it wasn't until, of course, going to therapy and understanding what this is that I'm experiencing is when I was told how to deal with it in my situation. Now, let's be clear. Even though I've had this support and I've been told how to deal with PTSD, I am by no means an expert of dealing with PTSD. As my family, they know. But so because even to this day, I had to explain to my daughter, she may want to walk up and hug me. I need you to let me know that you're coming, because it startles me. And when I get startled, it can trigger some reactions. And sometimes it just keeps going and there's nothing I can do about it. So that's just a little bit about my story. Um, but I like, and people, let me just say, I'm gonna pull up some of these comments too. Just here says where I am not alone. I am not alone. Same here too, Didi. Thank you for saying that. And Courtney said, I like to be in control due to my PTSD. And that is another point I was about to make. So much so that I had to like set ground rules with my family, my husband and my daughter especially, to let them know, okay, please don't wake me up out of my sleep without calling my name. You know how people just tap you on the shoulder or just, come in and maybe touch you? You cannot do that to me. That is a no-no. My family knows that. Um, like I said, my daughter, I love her to death, but sometimes if she just walks up and hug me and I don't hear her around me, it can make me have a response. And just here to inspire says, I meant, woo, Dee Dee, thank you for vulnerability. I freeze up. Yes, that is one of the most common problems that you have when you have PTSD. So I want to start by also, even though that's a little bit about my story, but I also looked up some of the statistics that they have out right now for those people who suffer PTSD. And these are the latest, it's for 2024. And I thought they were very interesting. So the first one is 6%, or 3 in every 50 American adults have gone through PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder at some point in their lives. Now, it's interesting to note that you can cope with PTSD. So it's not like something that you can't live with, because of course you can. Because of course, when you're looking at movies and different things like that, it only shows the worst part of PTSD. If they show someone who has it, they are going off, flying off the handle, you know, all type of different responses. So we're not really talking about that today, but that is a response that can be that can come across when you do have PTSD. So another fact is that the leading cause of PTSD is, and I have to, of course, use another word since we're on YouTube. And even though I'm not monetized yet, I still want to be careful. So, and I forgot to put my banner up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let that go. Um, most PTSD, it is 33% comes from actual violence, S violence, with a 94% of rape victims develop the symptoms during the first 2 weeks after a traumatic experience. So that's going to be interesting also later on when we talk about when this PTSD can come across in your life. Another one says women have a lifetime PTSD prevalence rate of 9.7 compared to 3.6 in men. So even though this can happen to men or women, majority of the women hold on to PTSD for a lifetime more than most men who have it. And then it says 11% to 23% of veterans have experienced PTSD within a given year. About 17.2 veterans die by unaliving themselves each day, with veterans being 1.5 times more likely to die by unaliving themselves a civilian than a civilian. 3 in 10, or 30% of the first responders have PTSD. Hello, network specialist. Glad you were able to make it. Welcome. I'm giving out the statistics. I always have problems with that word, but I'm giving out the statistics for 2024 when it comes to PTSD. And then it says people with PTSD who use a substance in their for their symptoms are 2.57 times more likely to recover from this condition. So they believe that I don't know what the correct word would be to use when it's talking about it's legalized in some states. I'll put it like that. You know what I'm talking about. So now let's talk about some of the symptoms of this awful, um, debilitating at times situation that we can have. And I just really want you to think about how common it is, because we are on here, and like I said before, most of us know somebody, if not ourselves, that suffer from this disorder. So some of the triggers about PTSD, well, I'm sorry, some of the symptoms is triggers. That's what I was trying to say, which cause flashbacks, intense memories, and terrible nightmares of the incident. So those who suffer from PTSD understand, like, when we've seen movies of veterans with PTSD, they always show them like they're back in combat, and it's real to them, and it's like it's happening right in front of their eyes. That's the same when you have PTSD from other situations. So no matter what the cause was, PTSD, you can have a flashback, and it will put you right back in the scene of whatever it was that happened to you. So another thing it talks about, it results in extreme flight or I'm sorry, fight or flight responses. Extreme. So everybody around you may be just chilling, and all of a sudden you have this trigger, and it makes you run and hide or get out of, out of the way, or whatever the case may be, because that flight or I cannot say it. I'm sorry. Fight or flight response is heightened because of the PTSD. So another thing is intense fear or panic attacks. And I kind of talked about that earlier. If you've ever had a panic attack, you feel like you're having a heart attack. Sometimes people can't tell the difference. Only if you have panic attacks on a regular basis or have had them before, then you can kind of tell that that's what it is. But it's still difficult because it shows up like a heart attack. So you can't always just say it's a panic attack. Sometimes you do have to go to the doctor to ensure that you're not having a heart attack. So just keep that in mind. So it talks about with this is chest tightening, palpitations, rapid breathing, increased blood pressure, and other things. Now, another symptom of PTSD is avoidance. It's pretty much self explanatory, but let's talk about it. You avoid people, you avoid places, you avoid activities that you usually would like to do. It says thoughts and emotions that remind you of the traumatic event. So you try to keep those out of your mind. You do things to try to fill up that space so that you don't have to think about it. Another symptom can be increased arousal symptoms. So, and let me tell you, this article that I'm reading from is spot on because I deal with a lot of this myself. So when I read it, I was like, whoa, this is me. So even if I hadn't been diagnosed before, I would know after reading this article that I am a person who suffer from PTSD. Hello, the Valley Girl. Welcome. Good to see you here. Okay, so this increased arousal symptom, it says small things like noises and stressful events can easily startle you. So I talked about how I'm easily startled. Like, really, I had to have a real conversation with my family. Please don't scare me because I can't take it. You feel jittery, nervous, quick to anger, moody, and paranoid. You develop sleep problems. And that's so true because if I go to sleep, I can sleep a good 4 to 5 hours and then I'm up. If I try to sleep 8 hours like they recommend, I'm waking up with a headache. Now I can sleep 4 to 5 hours, get up for a moment or two, walk around, and then go back to sleep, or I can take naps. But I can't sleep a straight 8 hours because if I do, I'm waking up, I don't feel good at all. So I can attest to that also. Then the increased mood and cognition symptoms. So you develop negative thoughts, inability to focus and concentrate, remembering things, recall memories, especially around a traumatic event. So, for an example, because I'm being very candid and personal on this live, because like I said, this affects me. Hello, Hill 75. Welcome, welcome. So, I remember this thing that happened. And like I said, I'll explain more about my traumatic childhood. Most people probably can already figure out when I talk about my stepfather and how horrible he was. But there was a incident that happened, and I literally cannot remember it. And my sister, one day we were talking, and she was explaining to me what happened because I really cannot remember what happened, and it was traumatic, but I just really could not remember. So that's just an instance of where my PTSD has blocked that memory out. And a lot of times that's for survival. It helps us to really be able to go on from day to day by not having those memories and those thoughts about whatever that traumatic event that happened. And so when we think about those different things that can happen to people and those different symptoms, I want to ask the chat, because I want this to be conversational. What do you think, out of all the symptoms we talked about, what would you think would be the most difficult symptom to deal with in everyday life? And now I'll give everybody, time to think, just to get some feedback. What do you think? What would be the most difficult symptom that we've talked about so far? And I'll go back over it. One is the reliving symptom, which is triggers, and they cause flashbacks, memories, nightmares. We have the avoidance, where you avoid going places, doing things, avoid your favorite activities, and even try to avoid emotion. Also, things like being startled, the increased arousal symptom, being startled, um, increased mood or cognition symptoms, having those negative thoughts. Just curious, which ones would you think would be the hardest to deal with in life? Okay. Courtney said triggers. Yes, I agree. Healed 75 said triggers. I agree. Anybody else? Because I got a follow up question to that of why you say triggers. Triggers, yep. So let me ask you, why do you say that triggers are the most difficult to deal with in life? I have a thought about it, but I want to hear what you all think. Why would it be triggers? And the network specialist, she said triggers as well. Why do you think? And it's not like a big question. Just whatever you're thinking right now. Why would triggers be hard for you to deal with in life? So Courtney said the rest can be controlled. When I'm triggered, I'm not in control. Bingo. That's my exact thoughts. Because hey, Aunt Debbie, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. Just to go along with what you were saying, Courtney, why that's so powerful to say that is because you never know when a trigger will affect you. You can just have a normal day. You can be going about your business and something affects you. For instance, this lady that I know, um, we were sitting, hey, Ro Reacts, hello, welcome, welcome. Glad you popped in. Hey, Braylon, welcome. Oh, the network specialist, before I say this example, the network specialist says, because the rest of the things you mentioned you can maintain, but the triggers can come out of any, yes, out of anywhere. So let me give you an example. This lady was sitting, talking, enjoying herself. And all of a sudden, a door slammed. She immediately started having anxiety and panic attacks. Immediately, she started crying. At first, everybody was like, didn't, she was trying to laugh, but it got so bad, she started crying. And in my mind, if you know, you know, I said, it's not possible that that happened by chance. She's had a traumatic event of some kind, and that gave her a trigger response. We could not calm her down. And the worst part of it was the weirdest thing happened. The door locked, and we couldn't open the door from the inside. So they were knocking on the door trying to get somebody to open the door. But when somebody said that, so when the door slammed, first she's laughing, right? But when somebody said, "Oh no, the door is locked, we can't get out," she started crying. In my head, I was thinking, somebody locked her in a room before where she couldn't get out and she didn't have any control. So immediately she gave a response to that one thing. Now, all of us was locked in the room together. We all in the same boat. But for her, it was a lot more serious. And then after that, I talked to her about it and I was trying to really, let her know that I understood. And so we had a long conversation and we were able to really talk about some of the things we had been through in life that maybe she told me at that point. This She's older than I am. She's like a mother figure to me. She told me that was the first time she openly had a conversation about her PTSD and what caused it. Her children don't even know. So for me, I felt honored, but I knew the only reason why she was okay to tell me is because I understood exactly what she was going through. So everybody else, they were like shocked and surprised at her reaction. Everybody was kind of looking at her. Some people was, trying to calm her down. They were doing a lot of things. I didn't touch her because I know when you're going through a trigger, when you it can be heightened by everybody else around you. If somebody else, it's just a reaction that you'll get and it can keep going depending on what kind of trigger it is. Now her trigger was a outwardly trigger because the door shut and it was locked. Her thought process went into, I can't get out of this room. It took her somewhere. But if had it been a trigger of being touched or something like that, the more people come up to her and touch her and try to console her, the worse her trigger would have become. So that's another thing that we have to be thoughtful about. And if you've never been through PTSD, you may think, what in the world is Dee Dee start talking about? You may not understand it, but if you have it, you know what I'm talking about. It's You lose control at that point when you have a trigger. And a trigger doesn't care where you are. You're going to react to that trigger because your body never forgets, your mind never forgets, but you can try to learn to control it as much as possible. It won't be perfect, but as much as possible, as well as have supportive people around you who understand what you go through. So I just want to put that out there and welcome everybody that came in the chat. I hope I said hello to everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. Like I was saying when I started off, this is a very special subject for me because I actually deal with PTSD. And so, hey, Bad Apple, you found me. Hey, girl. So, everybody else I usually see, and Braylon, this is your first time, so thank you, welcome. So, just to let you all know, what I was saying before, that PTSD. Most of the time, we think about PTSD, we think about veterans having PTSD because of course, they're frontline in combat a lot of times. So when they come home back to society, they come home carrying a lot of weight in their brain, in their body, everything. So they go through a lot of triggers and they have a lot of side effects with the PTSD. Whereas a lot of times we don't think about PTSD affects so many different people. It doesn't matter if you're male, female, it doesn't matter if you are a child, adult, grandparent, father, mother, whoever you are. It crosses all color bounds. It doesn't matter. Cultures, PTSD can happen to anybody. And so June is PTSD Awareness Month. So I felt like because I actually deal with this disorder, that it would be wonderful to have an open conversation about it because it's something I don't generally get to do, but I wanted to talk to my people. And also, hopefully, if you suffer through PTSD, you have support. Also, if you think you suffer through PTSD, some of the things I've talked about are symptoms may help you to get help with the PTSD that you might suffer. Because I was saying before, just to recap a little bit, I didn't realize I had PTSD until I was like in my 20s or 30s, maybe late 20s, early 30s, is when I really understood what PTSD was, and that was through therapy. I had the symptoms all along. I just didn't know what it was. So if you feel like that you are suffering from PTSD, please, please, go get help, support. Therapy is a wonderful thing because they give you the skills needed to cope with this on a regular basis. Because we were also discussing out of all of the symptoms that you have with PTSD, triggers are the worst because you have no control of when you'll be affected by a trigger. And, you know, a lot of times, depending on the trigger, if you act out according to the trigger, people going to look at you like you're strange or whatever. But also, it's difficult to tell people what's happening to you at the moment. So it's just one of those things that's really powerful to know about. Triggers are the worst, and we all agreed in the chat so far. So if you're coming in late, no problem. Just hit the replay and you can go back over some of those symptoms we talked about. And we talked about some of the realities of 2024, how people are dealing with this disorder on a regular basis. Now, one thing I want to bring up that a lot of people don't understand or realize. Hello, Miranda Smith. Welcome, welcome. Some people don't understand that those 2 years of us being in the house because of that situation we all went through caused people to have PTSD. Thank you, the network specialist. Yes, please hit the like button. Please, please help me be in the algorithm since this is an important subject. But a lot of people don't even understand that our children are now affected with PTSD because of those 2 years they spent in the house of this fearful thing that we didn't really know that was going on. We didn't really have a lot of information. Remember, I think it was what, March 2020 when everything shut down? We didn't really know the effects that was going to have over our lives. And for those 2 years, we couldn't really, we had to be very careful about everything. We had to wear masks, something we never done before. Children wearing masks to school. It was just so many things. We had this big debate on if you should go get the, you know, how can I say it? Go to the doctor and be counted as one that got the special medicine so that you can possibly avoid catching. I mean, it was so many different things we dealt with. And this affected our children a lot. I remember the debates that was going on where mothers were upset about the mask being worn, or should they require kids to do it? Should they not? The kids were angry because they didn't want to wear. It was just so many different things. I remember they had a thing. It was so many. Also, you was just fearful for everything. Wash your groceries when you bring them in the house. Remember, a lot of people was doing deliveries. Nobody wanted to go to the grocery store. People were not able to visit their family members. My sister-in-law, she gave birth to a preemie during that time. We couldn't visit him. She was the only one who could go to the hospital. All we could look at is his pictures. Thankfully, he's two now. But that was a very difficult time in all of our lives that we experienced. And a lot of people don't really talk about the effects that it had up until now, where there are still people to this day afraid to leave the house in fear of catching it. That's PTSD, because some people, just the thought about leaving the house to be around other people cause them panic, cause them anxiety. So it's a very difficult thing to think about, but we really have to look at our children and really understand what they went through at that time, because a lot of children have not gotten help. And if you notice, children, and I'm not saying this is the only reason why, but I've noticed that children are having harder times in school than they were before 2020. It could be a coincidence, or it could have affected those kids in a way that nobody is really paying attention to. So for me, I always think about, because I have a 12-year-old, I believe they should have therapy in school for all kids, just in case, because we just never know. Not to mention other things that kids could be going through at home or whatever the case, but to they should have given kids therapy to come back to school and be reacclimated into school life, because that was difficult for them. Like, it was painful to watch my child go on Zoom, and a lot of children did not like Zoom. That was not good for them. So they were having difficulty learning, completing schoolwork. It's just so many things that happened at that time that nobody really addressed. Even to this day, we're 4 years out from it and nobody says anything about it. But when we think back, could that possibly be the reason why our children are struggling? A lot of children, not all children, but there's a lot of children that are struggling, after that point in time. And it's possible that those kids could be suffering from PTSD. Now, just to get back to the conversation a little bit, we kind of talked about the symptoms, we talked about some of the challenges, and, I gave you a little bit of my personal story. So, another thing I want to talk about is really understanding the struggles that people go through with PTSD. it's not something that you can just say tomorrow, you know what? I don't have PTSD no more. I'm cured. If you can say that, please tell me what you did. Because I don't believe that can happen. And just to be honest, as we get older, as you go through things, you can be an innocent bystander to something, and that can cause you PTSD. The children now are seeing more violence on TV than ever before. A lot of them play violent video games, and the video games are getting so graphic now. Some of the TV shows are very graphic now, to the point that I believe that it's starting to cause children to have PTSD, not just from what we saw from 2020, but when you think about what they are having to deal with in our world that we live in today. Most of us on this chat, we're all adults. When we watched TV at a young age, all we saw, we knew that somebody was unalive. Maybe we looking at a murder. Nah, I shouldn't have said a mystery. I'm still working on my words to make sure I get don't get my video taken. But you know what I'm saying? We used to see a little mystery. We watched the program, but you never actually saw the person, or they never actually showed anything red, or they never showed. Now the shows are so graphic. They show every part of what has happened to the person before the mystery even gets started. And so this is causing our children to be desensitized to a lot of things, but it also can cause them to have PTSD. Because if we think back of what we talked about with veterans, veterans have PTSD because of what they see, what they've seen, and what they had to experience. So now, if we're being realistic, what is that doing to our children when they're seeing, even to us? Because now that's called entertainment. The more gory and graphic that it is, that's entertainment. That's what they say now. Rated PG 13 movies or rated PG that used to be would be like sweet, nice stories or whatever, now are very, very graphic with horror and all the things that come along with it. So if we really be honest and think about it, that affects our children as well as us, and it can cause PTSD. And like I said before, a disclaimer, the things that I'm talking about in this video, if it doesn't affect you, then that's what it is. However, I truly believe that everyone knows someone in their life that they are affected by PTSD, whether you know it because they told you or because you're seeing some of the symptoms and signs that I've talked about on this video. So, just be aware. Okay. And I want to look at the comments because I see a few comments coming through. Let's see. We go back. Everybody's speaking. The network specialist said that's true. Network specialist said, yeah, that was a lot. Um, Brenda Wallace. Did I say hello to you, Brenda Wallace? I'm sorry if I didn't, but hello and welcome. She says, my grandson has PTSD from the military. He was hurt while he was ADV. Yes. So, and we talked about that. And most of the time, that's the face of PTSD is our veterans. That's what we usually, attribute it to. But being honest, there's so many people, regular everyday people that never been to combat that suffer from PTSD. And a lot of people are ashamed of it. They won't talk about it. And it's sometimes difficult because when a trigger happens, the looks that they get or the treatment that they get is just so unfortunate. And I can speak for myself Been there, done that, where people just don't really understand, and I might not even have the voice to tell them what I'm going through. So it's amazing to me. Um, the network specialist says, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. If it helps one person, it was so worth it." And this is why I'm doing these type of videos. I love all the stuff. Y'all see me on the YouTube streets. I like talking about all the good stuff. But this is what I'm passionate about, helping people who deal with these different disorders or different things that most of us in our community are made to feel ashamed of. We don't talk about it much. We don't allow an open space for support because of the fact that we're still trying to learn to deal with mental health. We're in 2024, and I guarantee you there is somebody somewhere that still say there's no need for therapy. You shouldn't take therapy. It's stupid to be a therapy. It's not dumb. If you need a doctor for any other part of your body, you definitely need a doctor for your brain because that controls every part of your body. So that's why it's so important to have these conversations. Um, Brenda Wallace said, growing up, we were never allowed to watch scary movies because she says our eyes and ears are portals. Yes. And one of the sayings I remember hearing when I was young, whatever comes in the brain leaves a stain. I always remember that. So whatever your eyes see, it goes in. A lot of times you can't get rid of it. Brenda Wallace said exactly. And Dale Valley, and I hope I'm saying your name right. Is it Dale Valley girl? Just say yes or no to let me know. Even sound it out if I'm getting it wrong. But thank you. She said, "Great conversation. I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much." Miranda Smith says, "These are much needed conversations. Thank you. Thank you." The network specialist says, "Speak." Thank you. Hey, I was really, really, really thinking about this conversation when I'm gonna just tell you this little story. On Saturday, I was looking at my calendar for something, and of course, June 1st said Pride Month, and it was something I had scheduled for June 1st. But then I saw PTSD awareness, and I said, "That's what I need to talk about." And I'm gonna be honest with you. I looked up PTSD awareness and everything. It has actually been going on since 2014. This was my first time ever seeing this on my calendar, like my regular Google calendar. I've never seen it say PTSD awareness. Now, granted, maybe I looked over it. Maybe I didn't look at my calendar on the June 1st. I don't know. But that was the first time I really noticed it. And so that is the reason why we're having this conversation because this is a one of those subjects that nobody want to talk about. Of course, if you are a psychologist, psychiatrist in the mental health field, they have these type of discussions, but not everyday people. And then I need to give this disclaimer. No, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or a social worker. I am just a person, a everyday person who've experienced this disorder for a long time in my life. And I think it's a powerful conversation to have so we can all have the knowledge about PTSD. Oh, I'm sorry. Courtney was saying to Brenda Wallace, deaf are portals. The Valley girl said, yes, thank you. And then Brenda Wallace said, I still don't watch. Yes. And it's sad, but that's entertainment. Really, it's difficult to find things to watch because that's what our entertainment has come to in 2024. So basically, I don't want to harp on this for a real long time. The time has flew by. It's so crazy. It's almost been an hour and I didn't even realize it. But that's how much, passion I have about this subject. And there's many more things to talk about with this. Like I said, if you came in late, please go back so that you can, hear some of the signs and symptoms, some of the statistics that are going on today when it comes to this matter. Also, think about your own life. If you don't experience PTSD, maybe pay attention to your family members or friends, colleagues who you may notice these symptoms in, and give them support, because I guarantee you it's a difficulty in their life. It's the same difficulty as if you are paralyzed in a wheelchair. I'm not even joking. That's one thing that I've said to my husband plenty of times over our years of being married. Because depression and PTSD goes hand in hand. So most of the time, if you have one, you most likely have the other two. And I remember he would say, well, come on, just get up, let's go out, let's do something, so you can feel better. And I would tell him, when it comes to someone paralyzed in a chair, do you tell them to get up and walk? Because they would if they could. If you see me like this, I'm in a paralyzed like state. And that's just being honest. Now, of course, that conversation I don't have with many people, but that's the conversation my husband and I talked about, so he could really understand what I go through when I'm at that point in time. And for me, I talked about at the beginning, the PTSD I have is not from one trauma. I've had multiple traumas in my life. So, because it's multiple traumas in my life, my PTSD shows up in many different ways. And it's a person on YouTube that I watch her channel a lot. Sometimes I don't watch her videos because it brings up a lot in me. And Courtney brought it up earlier in the live that we want to have control. People with PTSD, we need to control our surroundings. So I remember people telling me, "You so controlling." And I thought, that's a bad thing to say to me. I'm not controlling. But when I think about it and I'm being honest, I'm controlling. I have to have certain things a certain way because of the fact when I don't, that other side, I don't want other people to have to see. And I don't want people to have to deal with that part of me. But being honest, it's a part of me. And it's only thing I can do with it is survive and cope. I can never let it go. So, that's just a part of the PTSD. Now let me go back to the comments. Um, the network specialist said we need to get comfortable having the hard conversations. Yes, we do, and being honest with ourselves and other people. And if the people that you're honest with can't support you in that situation, then you move on to where your support is. Everybody know my favorite saying from De Silva, because most of us go on her channel. If you go where you celebrate it, not where you tolerate it. And that's just how I feel. When I first heard her say that saying, it was like bells in my ear, because I've been needing that my whole life. I never even thought about my life in that way, but now I don't play. I believe that I go where I'm celebrated, not where I'm tolerated. Brenda Wallace said, but it's needed. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm so happy that you all are here and really taking this in, because this is a really something that a lot of these subjects I didn't plan on talking about until I got monetized, because it's a very deep thing for me, because it's like me turning myself inside out. However, when I think about it, I don't care if it was one person on the live only. If one person can be helped, and I think network specialist said it earlier, then I'm good. My whole life, I've dealt with things, situations, problems, and I had to be silent and just deal with it. Whether it was the PTSD that my family didn't understand why I was reacting the way I was reacting, and they called me names or looked down on me because of not understanding exactly what I was going through, so they couldn't support me or help me in my journey. Now I'm in control of my own life. I don't need their help and support because I'm going where I'm celebrated, not tolerated. So in this day and time, I have a passionate need to help others with the same struggles that I've had. And maybe you don't have to struggle so hard. If anybody who hasn't went through trauma go through a trauma, you can look back and say, "Well, I remember Dee Dee Star was saying this and that. Okay, now I can cope. I can deal." And we haven't really went through the coping mechanisms right yet. We're going to go through that, but just to let you know that there are ways to cope with this. It's not it's not a sentence, a lifelong sentence that you have to live with, and you can't have a functioning life. You can't thrive. You can learn to thrive in the midst of having PTSD, even though it may be difficult. Um, I don't know if I said this. Oh, yeah, Brenda Wallace said, but it's needed. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going back to the comments. Ro React said, yes, we all know someone. That's facts. Brenda Wallace said, exactly. The network specialist said, it's all around us in our families and friends. Yes. Kicking it with Courtney said, same. Bad Apple said, I'm a survivor too. Therapy has literally saved my life. And Bad Apple, we've talked on the Silvers panel before, so we've had these conversations, and I'm going to have more conversations like this. It's just the tip of the iceberg. I got a lot of things that I've been wanting to get out, and now that I have my own platform, hey, I got to get this out of me. And also because, just being honest, a lot of these things have stifled my life, because whether I didn't know what I was going through at the time, so it put me in a fear, category where I didn't know how to move, or it's one of those things where I didn't get support. So I had to silence my thoughts and how I felt about things. But now I'm at a point where my confidence level is good. I understand who I am as a woman, and I also know the power that I can give to others. So with that, why not share it? Courtney, you said, I know I'm controlling, but I try and chill, but I still gotta have control. Yes, yes, we do. It's just what it is. Hill 75 said, your content, she said, love your content, food for thought. Thank you so much. Brenda says, thank God my daughter is also a veteran and a nurse, so she knows what to do for her son. That's powerful. My youngest daughter is a mental health nurse and deals with it daily with youth. Hey, that's a blessing that that's the field that she's in. We need more people to be in the mental health field, because that's another issue that we have, is a lot of times that's not a field that people think about going into, but it's so needed. Um, I'm gonna try to look up this article before I leave. It was on Psychology Today, and this is so weird. During the pandemic, because I'm a researcher, I love to research. It got to the point that I used to research so much, because if I have a thought about something, I'm gonna dig, dig, dig until I can, really understand it, and I feel good about it, and I can even explain it to somebody. So I remember I used to print off all these papers and stuff. My husband was like, "Why are you printing all this stuff out? Just leave it in your computer, what you looked up." But it's something about holding that piece of paper and looking at it, reading it, and highlighting it. I love it. So anyway, that's just a little side note. But during the pandemic, I remember seeing this thing come up from Psychology Today, and it was saying that after 2020, you know, the situation, that they were going to have a shortage of mental health personnel, because they predicted that there would be millions of people experiencing more mental health episodes than they have the oh, it just slipped my mind what I was trying to say. Oh, they didn't have as many health care workers to compensate the amount of mental health people, the people that will have mental health issues. So when we think about 2024, we are, let's see, when it was officially over where we could really be outside, I'll say 2022. So we 2 years out from that. Can we imagine just how many people, and we're seeing it every day on the news, that now they need to really start to do differently when they get phone calls about mental episodes, because the first responders that come out, they don't know how to deal with it. So it's a, I can go on that subject for a long, we can talk about that all night, but just some things to think about that. And I have a friend, she just got her, she a doctor now. That's my girl. She got a PhD in social work, and then her main thing is mental health. So, it's a shortage. So if you have children that are, thinking about what can I do or go to college, they want to be in a medical field or something, if they can handle it, suggest mental health. We just need more of it. We need compassionate people. We need people who really want to understand the human race in that way, because that's the least cared for group when it comes to the medical field, you know, because they are still learning about mental health. So that's why I think it's an important conversation, and, not to ramble. Um, Thank you, network specialist. Healed 75 said PTSD is crippling sometimes. Yes, it's like it paralyzes you. And the network specialist said, I'm a researcher too. Yes. When we research, if you're a researcher, it can get pretty bad. But, I always say I know a lot about a lot of things, and not because I went to school for it, because if I want to know, I'm going to look it up, and I'm going to keep looking it up. If it doesn't make sense the first time, I'll just keep looking it up until I can make some sense of it. So, that's just what it is. And, you know, so look for some of that research, in some of these videos. But anyway, getting back on topic, um, let's talk about the coping. Let's talk about a little bit about coping. And I don't want to keep y'all all night. I know we've been on here for an hour, but just some strategies to help cope with PTSD, because like I said, even if you don't deal with it yourself, you can help someone else to deal with it. So some of the coping, and it's across the board, really. PTSD, like I said, PTSD and depression and anxiety, all of that goes hand in hand a lot of times, because a lot of people become depressed because of the PTSD when they realize what's going on with them, or they feel isolated in their own feelings and thoughts. And so they're not able to reach out for support, or ashamed to reach out for support. So it's common, for those who suffer with PTSD to really isolate themselves because of fear of the way people would treat them. So let's talk about these coping mechanisms. One thing is the deep breathing. And I'm going to tell you this. I remember the first time a therapist was talking about breathing, and the first thing I thought is, are they trying to hypnotize me? What is really going on? I was like, I don't want to be barking. I don't want to be doing no weird stuff. And then I snap out of it and I have no idea what just happened. Don't do that to me. But no, that's not what happens. So most people, and I have to make a little fun of this because it's such a deep conversation, but it's realistic. That's what I was thinking. So this breathing that you do is from the diaphragm. And a lot of times they say breathe and, count your breaths and really get into your breathing. A lot of people with PTSD, you will notice they don't really breathe. That's why they have a lot of anxiety. because that fear is always there. So a lot of times it's hard to turn it off. And so they take short breaths. A lot of short breaths. They just have a hard time with it. So that's one thing that whether you have PTSD or you know someone to have it, they suggest the deep breathing method. And I'm gonna put some of these articles in my video, once go off live, so you can look some of these things up yourself. But and it talks about the deep breathing that you can do. Another thing is progressive muscle relaxation. Now, this I got it down to a science. And I have to tell you the story of why I know this. So I was going into surgery at the hospital. I mean, you know, they only gave me like, if you've ever had surgery, of course they put you on a drip to keep you sleep during the surgery. But sometimes they may give you a little something to put you in that twilight type sleep before they knock you completely out. Well, so I'm going into surgery and I could hear them talking, but I was so nervous about the surgery that I was totally relaxing myself, so much so that I went to sleep. And I could hear them talking like, "Did you give her some medication yet?" Wh- And so they had to wake me up to put me back to sleep because I had I was so much in fear of this surgery that I totally relaxed myself. And so that's one of those things that help to cope. And that's where it comes from because I have PTSD and I was taught how to relax myself. That as soon as I felt that anxiety about the surgery, I went into that mode without even realizing it. And I was knocked out, promise you, probably snoring and all. So they had to wake me up, make sure I was fully awake before they could start putting in the IV. Just a little, story for me. So, but this is one of those coping mechanisms you can use if you have PTSD or know someone that have PTSD. So then it talks about mindfulness techniques. So some people would call it meditation. So a lot of times, having those positive thoughts and a lot of times this is a spiritual thing for a lot of people to have meditation, and they really advise to do this, and that will help you to, cope with the different symptoms of PTSD. Another one is it talks about to reduce your depression. Now, to me, that's something you can't really do on your own. From what I'm thinking, I could be wrong because a lot of times depression can be a chemical imbalance. So you would have to get some type of therapy a lot of times for depression. There's other things you can do to help with your depression, but for some people, if it's chemical, you need the chemical to offset it. So, like I said, I'm not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker. This is just from what I've known in my own life. So if you don't agree, I mean, please don't come for me in the comments. I'm reading a article and I will put all the links in the description box so you can read it for yourself. So just don't throw no tomatoes. Another thing is increase your emotional regulation. This is another technique that's kind of like the mindfulness technique, and it's because most people who deal with PTSD, they don't control their emotions well. And we don't control our emotions well because when we're startled, when we are in a situation that we can't control, some type of trigger, our emotions are all over the place. So, this is another one of those coping mechanisms that is really would help to get a therapist or someone in the mental health field to help you to learn how to regulate your emotions. Reduce anxiety and stress. And a lot of times people with PTSD, once again, goes hand in hand with anxiety and stress because you're stressed about maybe having a trigger. I know it's weird. I know it sounds like we're just going back and forth with this thing, but it's the honest truth. Most people who deal with PTSD are always conscious of maybe having an episode. So you try to do as much as you can to have control of your surroundings. However, just being honest, we can't control everything. A lot of times we have stressful jobs. Anxiety is definitely the fear of what could happen. So just because you're trying to control your PTSD, you have fear of having a trigger with your PTSD. I know, but that's the truth. So if you know, you know. It's just really what happens. So it really gives you suggestions about how to deal with your stress and anxiety. Another thing it talks about, and all of these are like coping mechanisms. Most of the things that I'm talking about right now go in hand with the mindfulness, those benefits. So it helps you to really deal with the PTSD. Now, going back to the other coping mechanisms, I just have a few more. Self monitoring, that's another one. If you know, you know. That's hard to do. You have to really learn how to do that. Um, Having social support. I don't really know if they have groups, and I meant to look that up. If they have groups that are especially dealing with PTSD, I'm not sure. If I find out, I'll put that in the description as well. Self-soothing. So those, and all of these things you can um, s- look at this article. It's in the Very Well Mind article. And then writing. Me personally, this is one of my favorite things to do when I'm having a problem, even if I can't do it in the midst of a trigger, because of course you are responding to the trigger, but later on down the line, sometime I try to write about what I felt, what possibly caused the trigger. Sometimes you know what caused it, sometimes you don't. So that's just one of those things. And then they say distraction techniques. So it gives a lot of things you can do to help distract you from you know, having episodes like talking to a friend, doing housework, exercising, engaging in creative tasks, watching TV, reading books, playing games, counting backwards, visualizing an enjoyable scene. The adult coloring books are very big for those who deal with any kind of mental health. Um, Playing video games, take a nap, do yoga, and meditating. So those are some of the things that go in line with having a healthy distraction from when you're dealing with PTSD. Also, the last one on here is behavioral activation. So it talks about um, it's it's a way of increasing your activity level and as well as how much you engage in positive and rewarding activities. So basically, it repeats the same list of things that I just said for the coping mechanism before. So those are some of the things that we can kind of do to try to help us. And me myself, it's some of these things that I don't do that I'm going to look into to try to help me, even more to deal with my PTSD because I have come to the understanding now that I have to, I can't let this disorder control me. I have to control the disorder. There go that control again. However, this is a good control because, so I'm saying to myself, but it is. It's a good control because I'm dictating to my disorder, how will affect my life as much as I possibly can. I cannot just allow the disorder to take over my life because I have a daughter, I have a husband, I have families, I have friends, and I have this YouTube family. And I want to be able to pour into as well as being poured into. So, in order for me to continue to do that, I have to get a handle on this disorder. So, I have enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've talked this whole time. As you can see, I love to talk and I'm very passionate about certain things, so I really like to talk about that. But if you have any thoughts or comments, anything you want to share, I'm not going to hold you because I know it's getting late and some people are an hour ahead. And, you know, I just really want to thank you all for coming tonight. This was really one of those difficult subjects. I kind of was getting a little antsy before because I didn't know how I was going to come across. But I really believe in being myself and really opening up. And I feel like if I share with you who I am, then you'll be comfortable with the content that I bring. I believe in being genuine. I believe in being yourself. I believe in having a space of support so that we all can be the best people we can be. We're all imperfect. We all have something. Even if PTSD is not something that you personally deal with, keep coming. I guarantee you, we're going to get on a subject that you'll be able to identify with in your own personal life. And if you don't, hey, I'm proud of that too. Maybe you can just be that support that many of us need that we may not have in our personal lives today. So just keep watching, keep coming back. If you have any thoughts about content that you want me to talk about, it's probably something on my radar already, but I'll take it. You can always contact me at any of my socials. I'm Love Seen Heard on Instagram, on Twitter, and my Gmail is also Love Seen Heard. So if you have anything you want to talk to me about or anything you thought about after this, because I'm gonna do a part two, of course, because I really touched the surface on a lot of these things. I just want to have a real general conversation, but I have more about PTSD that I can talk about, and we're gonna dig deep. And also, I want to let people come up on the panel. I didn't really do that tonight because I just wanted it to be just a general conversation introducing PTSD Awareness Month. But the next time, be ready. If you don't want to share a story, that's fine. You don't have to. But just be here for the support. If you need the support or if you can give support, that's what we're welcoming here. So, as always, well, you know what? Before I end, I got a few little announcements. I got to do some little housekeeping. If you haven't already, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. I mean, this is really heartfelt that I'm giving to you. So no money is involved. Just please hit that like, share this content with someone else, whether they need it or you know that other people need it. Please spread it, spread it. I hope I did my best on this content. I tried to be very simplified so that anybody can hear this and take something from it. So that's who I am. But also, there is a health initiative that will be starting in July. I do have people already starting with me. I only have a few more spaces left because I'm keeping the group small since this is like a beta program that I'm going to start with. So if you like to be in this health initiative, I'm not saying we're going on a diet or anything like that. We're working on health. So, because your health is your wealth, and we all can be healthy. So, if you like to be a part of it, please, please send me a Gmail at Love Seen Her Gmail. Also, those who have already signed up with me, please send me a Gmail. That's very important because I'm going to have something that I'm going to send back, and I want everybody to be in one place. So, if you like to get in this health initiative, please do. I'm welcoming whoever want to start with me. Also, another thing I was gonna say, we on the road to 500. I know I'm speaking it We at 3 something now, but we're gonna get to 500. So tell whoever you need to tell. Subscribe on your other channels because I got other channels. I'm subscribing to people too, just to help everybody out. So do that for me if you can. But also make sure you hit the like button. Also leave comments after the live on the because I've heard that that's also good too, to have good engagement with your videos to help people to see you in the algorithm. So please do that for me as well. um, Let me get back to some of these comments before I go. The imposter said, good information on the processes to help cope with this disorder. Thank you so much. Um, the Valley Girl, thank you for the applause. Thank you for the hearts, bad apple. Courtney, thank you for saying this excellent commentary. Y'all about to make me cry. Thank you, the network specialist. Great educational commentary, sis. Thank you. Thank you. Raw Reacts, great commentary. Thank you. Commit to the journey. I love that name too. Just to let you know, because I'm on a journey. If you don't know already, I probably say it every time I have a video. She says, hello everyone. Great commentary. I have folks in my family who suffer from this, from the military, and they receive the best help. Thank God. And that's a blessing because everybody don't get it. Some people won't even be honest about it. So that's a wonderful thing that your family members are able to get the help they need. And thank you, Raw Reacts. Yes, please, please, please share this video. So, you know, I've talked enough. I've shared some. I'm about to cry. So before I do all of this stuff, let me just say, when you go throughout your day, today, tomorrow, if you don't feel loved, I hope you feel loved now. If you know someone who needs love, please spread it. Please give them love. You don't have to do much. There's plenty of people in this world that feel invisible and they feel like they're not seen. Please make sure the people in your life, or even a stranger, know that you see them. And if you don't feel seen and you're here, know that I see you. If you want to be heard, come back. We'll hear you. Put something in the comments. Also, send me an email, a DM, whatever you need to do. If you have times in your life where, long as I'm here and available, I'll hear you. But also make sure that you hear others. Sometimes it's not what they say, but it may be a message behind what they say. You may see it in their eyes, or they may tell you they're okay, but the way they say it is not really true. So really pay attention to people. We have people out here suffering, and all they need is a little support. If you can give 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of your time, make a phone call, do whatever you have to do, send a card, let people understand that there's somebody thinking about them. You never know, it will go a long way. Also, just if you've been coming to my book review, I'm not done with the book review. It's just some of these other topics came in and I really wanted to talk about them, but we're going to get back on the book review. I may not do lives on the book review anymore because now I'm getting into these topics. So I may do some pre-recordeds. I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on that, but look out for the next chapters. I think I'm on chapter 7 through 9, and it's getting juicy because she talks about her relationship. So that's going to be pretty juicy. But I found out some more interesting things about her. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I do the book review on Chelsea Chris, the 2019 Miss USA, who unalived herself, unfortunately, in 2022. She wrote her book, gave it to her mother, and her mother had it published in April. So we've been going through that book and trying to understand her thought process. and also see what we can learn from that book. So if you haven't been over here before and you're interested, please come back so we can talk about that book. But for now, I'm telling you now, everybody in my audience, even if you're on the replay game, you have been loved, seen, and heard. Thank you. Have a good night, and I'm out.